Hey guys, tonight we're going to step back, way back, to a time when silence was a virtue and isolation a path to enlightenment. Imagine trading your cozy, Wi Fi connected apartment for a cold, stone cell, where the loudest sound is the whisper of your own breath, or perhaps the distant tolling of a bell. Tonight, we're exploring the world of medieval monks, those fascinating figures who willingly embraced a life of solitude, devotion, and, let's be honest, probably some pretty miserable isolation. Picture this: you're living in a bustling, perhaps chaotic, medieval town. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, livestock, and unwashed humanity. Life is short, often brutal, and filled with uncertainty. One day, you feel a calling, a profound spiritual yearning that pulls you away from the clamor and into the quiet embrace of a monastery. It's not just a career change. It's a complete reimagining of your existence, a deliberate withdrawal from the world. You're trading earthly comforts for spiritual pursuits, turning your back on the vibrant, messy tapestry of medieval life for a singular focus on the divine. You might think, well, that sounds rather peaceful. And in some ways, it absolutely was. But peace often comes at a cost. And for these monks, that cost was a profound and often challenging isolation. Now, let's be real. In our modern world, we complain if our internet goes out for an hour. These folks were signing up for a lifetime of digital detox. Only there was no digital to detox from. You're giving up your TikTok feed for well, prayer. You're swapping late night pizza runs for plain bread and water, and that's just the start. You're entering a world where your daily interactions are strictly limited, often by vows of silence, and your entire existence is governed by a rigid schedule dictated by bells and divine service. You're leaving behind family, friends, and the familiar rhythm of secular life, stepping into a communal yet deeply solitary existence. It's a bit like joining an ultra exclusive, highly disciplined club where the main activity is quiet reflection. And the membership fee is pretty much your entire former life. You're trading the cacophony of the marketplace for the hushed reverence of the cloister, and the easy banter of friends for the unspoken understanding of fellow ascetics. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from, say, a quiet cabin in the Appalachian Mountains, or perhaps a bustling city apartment in New York City, tell me where you are and what time it is. I love hearing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the imposing gates of an abbey. Perhaps the Abbey of St. Benedict in some forgotten corner of medieval England, or a newly consecrated monastery nestled deep in the Black Forest. The stone walls rise high, weathered by centuries of rain and wind, seemingly swallowing the sounds of the outside world. This isn't just a building, it's a fortress of faith, designed to keep the world out and devotion in. You've made the conscious choice to enter, to become a part of this ancient, self-contained universe. The heavy wooden doors swing open, revealing a tranquil courtyard, perhaps a gurgling fountain at its center, surrounded by cloisters where hooded figures move with a quiet purpose. The air inside is different, cooler, imbued with the scent of old parchment, beeswax candles, and perhaps a hint of damp stone. It's a stark contrast to the world you just left, and you feel the weight of your decision settle upon you, a mixture of peace and an undeniable, subtle apprehension. Your first days are a blur of new routines and unfamiliar faces. You're a postulant, then a novice, learning the ropes, the intricate dance of monastic life. You learn to rise before dawn, roused by the solemn clang of the matins bell, The chill morning air bites at your skin as you make your way to the dimly lit chapel, your bare feet padding softly on the cold stone floor. You join your brothers in chanting the ancient Latin words, a comforting drone that fills the cavernous space. It's a stark transition from the loose schedule of your former life, where your days were dictated by the sun and your whims. Here, time is a sacred construct, sliced into precise hours of prayer, labor, and study. You quickly realize that personal time, as you knew it, is a luxury no longer afforded. Every moment is accounted for, dedicated to the collective pursuit of spiritual perfection. The silence is perhaps the most striking element of your new existence. In many monastic orders, particularly those following the rule of Saint Benedict, vows of silence were strictly observed. You communicate through gestures, through knowing glances, or in rare, designated instances, through hushed whispers. Imagine going days, weeks, perhaps even months, with only the essential words spoken during religious services or necessary tasks. It forces you inward, compelling you to confront your own thoughts, your own inner landscape, without the constant distraction of conversation or external stimuli. You become acutely aware of the subtle sounds around you, the rustle of robes, the scratching of a quill, the distant bleating of sheep from the abbey fields. Your senses, deprived of constant chatter, heighten, allowing you to perceive the world with a newfound clarity. It's a sensory deprivation experiment, but one undertaken for spiritual rather than scientific gain. You learn to read faces, to understand unspoken intentions, to convey complex ideas with a simple nod or a pointed finger. This isn't just quiet, it's a profound shift in how you interact with the world and with yourself. You might find yourself missing the easy give and take of conversation, the simple joy of sharing a laugh, but gradually, a different kind of communication emerges, one rooted in shared purpose and silent understanding. Your days are structured with an almost military precision. After matins, you might move to lauds, then prime, terce, sext, nones, vespers, and finally complain before retiring for a few hours of sleep. In between these liturgical hours, you are engaged in various duties. Perhaps you are assigned to the scriptorium, meticulously copying ancient texts by hand, your fingers cramped from holding the quill, your eyes strained from the dim light. The parchment is expensive, the ink precious, and every letter, every flourish must be perfect. You are not just copying words, you are preserving knowledge, ensuring that the wisdom of ages survives for future generations. This is painstaking work, demanding immense patience and concentration. You might spend hours on a single page, the intricate illuminations blossoming under your careful hand. The smell of ink and vellum becomes a familiar comfort, and the rhythmic scratching of quills fills the air, a symphony of scholarly dedication. Historians still debate the true number of texts lost to time versus those meticulously preserved by these tireless monastic scribes. Or perhaps your duties lie in the fields, tilling the soil, planting crops, or tending to the livestock. Monasteries were often self-sufficient, their sustenance drawn from the land they cultivated. You experienced the raw physicality of labor, the ache in your muscles, the sweat on your brow. You learn the rhythm of the seasons, the harsh realities of agricultural life, and the profound satisfaction of harvesting what you have sown. You are connected to the earth in a way you never were before, reliant on its bounty for your very survival. This physical exertion, though often grueling, offers a different kind of solace, a release from the constant mental demands of prayer and study. You work alongside your brothers, a silent camaraderie forming as you share the burden of the labor. You might discover an unexpected talent for grafting fruit trees or a knack for predicting the weather based on the patterns of the clouds. These skills, once peripheral to your life, now become central, defining a part of your daily purpose. The food is simple, often bland, and eaten in silence in the refectory. No chatter, no gossip. Just the gentle clinking of bowls and the quiet murmur of a brother reading aloud from a sacred text. This communal silence reinforces the individual introspection. You eat, not for pleasure, but for sustenance, a further act of detachment from worldly desires. You become acutely aware of each bite, each flavor, a mindfulness that might have been lost in the distractions of a more boisterous meal. It's a practice in humility, a reminder that even the most basic human needs are to be met with gratitude and restraint. You learn to appreciate the simple sweetness of a fresh apple or the earthy richness of a vegetable stew in a way you never did when surrounded by more elaborate fare. Even when you're not actively engaged in prayer or labor, the expectation of contemplation pervades every aspect of your life. During your rare periods of rest, you might find yourself in the cloister garden, a serene space enclosed by arched walkways. You walk slowly, mindfully, perhaps contemplating a passage from scripture or simply allowing your mind to drift in quiet reflection. The scent of herbs and flowers, the gentle hum of bees, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, these small sensory details become profoundly significant, anchoring you to the present moment. You learn to find beauty in the mundane, to see the divine in the simplest of things. This isn't a life of constant excitement or dramatic events. It's a life built on the quiet accumulation of small, meaningful moments. You might spend an hour observing a single dewdrop clinging to a leaf or tracing the intricate patterns of a spider web, finding in these tiny wonders a reflection of the larger universe. The cell itself is your most private space, yet even here, privacy is relative. Your bed is a simple straw pallet, your furnishings minimal, a small desk, a stool, a crucifix on the wall. There are no personal mementos from your former life, no trinkets or distractions. This austere environment is designed to discourage attachment to worldly possessions and to foster a detachment from material comforts. It's a constant reminder of your vow of poverty and your commitment to a life of simplicity. You learn to make peace with the cold, the dim light, the starkness of your surroundings. It becomes a canvas for your spiritual journey, a place where you confront your inner self without external distractions. You might occasionally feel a pang of longing for the soft mattress you once had, or the vibrant tapestries that adorned your childhood home. But these feelings are transient, quickly supplanted by the pervasive atmosphere of spiritual dedication. One fascinating, yet often overlooked, detail of monastic life was the horarium, the strict daily schedule that governed every minute of a monk's day. While you might think of a monk's life as purely spontaneous prayer, it was anything but. The horarium, often dictated by the rule of Saint Benedict, divided the day into specific periods for prayer, the divine office or liturgy of the hours, work, study, and sleep. This rigid structure, while seemingly restrictive, provided a framework for spiritual discipline and ensured that every moment was consecrated to God. It was a stark contrast to the fluid, unpredictable schedules of those outside the monastery walls, offering a sense of order and purpose amidst the chaos of the medieval world. You might find yourself initially chafing against this strict timetable, feeling its relentless pull on your free will. But over time, it becomes a comforting, familiar rhythm, a silent guide through your days and nights. A common historical understanding is that medieval monks were entirely cut off from the world, isolated in their stone fortresses. While isolation was a key component of their spiritual practice, it wasn't absolute. Many monasteries served as centers of learning, charity, and even local commerce. They often had responsibilities to the surrounding communities, providing hospitality to travelers, administering to the sick, and offering refuge during times of conflict. So, while your personal experience of isolation is profound, the monastery itself is not entirely hermetically sealed. You might occasionally see outsiders, a local farmer bringing produce, a noble seeking counsel, or pilgrims on their way to a holy site. These brief encounters serve as faint echoes of the world you left behind, fleeting reminders of a different kind of existence. Yet, you are a part of this world too, albeit in a different capacity, a quiet anchor in a turbulent sea. This connection, however tenuous, adds another layer to your understanding of your own solitude. The psychological toll of such intense isolation was significant. Monks, despite their devotion, were still human. They grappled with loneliness, boredom, and the ever present threat of acedia, a spiritual sloth or torpor that was considered a serious vice. Acedia wasn't just laziness, it was a profound spiritual weariness, a sense of aimlessness and despair that could creep in during long hours of prayer or solitary labor. Imagine feeling a profound disinterest in everything, a spiritual emptiness that gnaws at your soul. It was the medieval equivalent of burnout, a feeling of being utterly drained and disconnected, even from God. Monks often described it as a noonday demon, a pervasive feeling of despondency that made prayer feel pointless and spiritual pursuits feel hollow. You would find yourself wrestling with this internal adversary, trying to reignite the spark of your faith, to push through the heavy blanket of apathy. It required immense willpower and constant vigilance, a testament to the mental fortitude these individuals possessed. To combat akidia and other spiritual trials, monks developed various coping mechanisms. Manual labor, as mentioned, provided a healthy distraction and a sense of tangible accomplishment. The rhythmic nature of tasks like gardening, baking, or crafting could be surprisingly meditative, grounding you in the present moment. Intellectual pursuits were also vital. The scriptorium wasn't just a place of copying, it was a center of study and intellectual inquiry. You would delve into theological texts, philosophical treatises, and the writings of the church fathers, engaging your mind in complex ideas. This mental engagement offered a powerful antidote to idleness and despair, keeping your intellect sharp and your spirit engaged. The sheer volume of knowledge contained within the monastic libraries was astounding, a testament to the value placed on learning, even in a life dedicated to contemplation. Sometimes, a brief, sanctioned conversation with an abbot or a spiritual elder could provide immense relief. These were not casual chats, but rather opportunities for spiritual guidance, for confessing doubts, and for seeking wisdom. The abbot, acting as a spiritual father, would offer counsel, remind you of your vows, and help you find your path again when you felt lost. These moments of connection, though rare and formal, were incredibly important, providing a vital lifeline in the vast ocean of your solitude. You would cherish these brief interactions, savoring the wisdom shared, feeling a renewed sense of purpose from the guidance you received. It was a reminder that even in isolation, you were part of a larger, supportive spiritual family. The beauty of the monastic environment itself also played a significant role in combating the rigors of isolation. The intricate carvings on the chapel altarpiece, the vibrant colors of the stained glass windows, the serene layout of the cloister garden. These aesthetic elements were designed to elevate the spirit and inspire devotion. You would find solace in the contemplation of beauty, seeing in it a reflection of divine order and perfection. The quiet contemplation of a beautifully illuminated manuscript, its intricate details unfolding before your eyes, could transport you beyond the confines of your cell, offering a glimpse into the boundless beauty of God's creation. You might spend hours simply observing the play of light on the ancient stone walls or listening to the harmonious chirping of birds in the courtyard, finding deep peace in these simple sensory experiences. These moments of aesthetic appreciation offered a respite from the internal struggles, a gentle reminder of the grace and wonder that still existed in your world. Consider the role of the monastic garden. Far from being merely a source of food, these gardens were meticulously planned and cultivated, often serving as havens of peace and contemplation. You might spend hours tending to herbs, vegetables, and flowers, finding a meditative rhythm in the repetitive tasks. The scents of lavender and rosemary, the vibrant colors of blooming roses, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. These sensory details provided a profound connection to the natural world. It was a place where you could commune with creation, observing the delicate balance of life, and finding metaphors for your own spiritual journey in the growth and decay of the plants around you. The garden became a microcosm of the divine order, a place where you could witness the unfolding mysteries of life in miniature. You might develop a particular fondness for a certain patch of herbs, carefully tending to them, feeling a quiet satisfaction in their flourishing. Another unique detail about monastic life was the practice of lectio divina, or divine reading. This wasn't just reading for information, it was a slow, contemplative, and prayerful approach to scripture. You wouldn't just read a passage, you would meditate on it, chew on it, letting its meaning seep into your soul. It involved four steps: lectio reading, meditatio meditation, oratio prayer, and contemplatio contemplation. This method transformed the act of reading into a profound spiritual exercise, allowing the words of God to truly penetrate your heart and mind. It was a deeply personal and solitary practice, yet it connected you to a tradition of spiritual wisdom stretching back centuries. You would spend hours with a single passage, allowing its nuances to unfold, discovering new layers of meaning with each slow, deliberate reading. This wasn't about speed or quantity, it was about depth and absorption, allowing the sacred text to shape your very being. Ultimately, the allure of monastic life, despite its undeniable isolation and rigorous demands, lay in its promise of profound spiritual growth and a direct path to God. For many, the miseries of isolation were a small price to pay for the spiritual rewards they sought. It was a life of radical commitment, a grand experiment in human endurance and faith. You, as a monk, embraced this challenge, knowing that within the quiet confines of the monastery, you were forging a deeper connection with the divine, a connection that transcended the fleeting pleasures and distractions of the secular world. And in that quiet strength, amidst the solitude and the struggle, you found a peace that resonated far beyond the stone walls that enclosed you. It was a path chosen not out of escapism, but out of a profound and unwavering belief, a commitment to a life lived entirely for a higher purpose. You learned that true solitude wasn't about being alone, but about being utterly present with yourself and with God, a lesson that would echo through the centuries. The matins bell pierces the pre-dawn silence, a familiar, insistent summons that pulls you from the shallow depths of sleep. Your straw pallet, though hard, offers little resistance to the cold seeping through the stone floor of your cell. You rise, pulling on your rough woolen habit, the fabric scratchy against your skin. This isn't the soft, comforting warmth of a modern blanket. It's a constant reminder of the physical austerity you've embraced. The air in your cell is frigid, and your breath plumes in the faint light filtering from the small, high window. There are no bedside lamps here, no smart devices to scroll through before facing the day. Your world is lit by the flickering glow of a single beeswax candle, or more often, by the pale pre-dawn light. This darkness is by design, a deliberate stripping away of comfort to focus the mind on the spiritual. You move with practiced ease, your body accustomed to the chill and the early hour, a quiet efficiency born of years in this monastic rhythm. You pad silently through the cloister, your bare feet or simple sandals, making little sound on the cold flagstones. The other monks, dark figures moving like shadows, gather in the dimly lit chapel. The air is thick with the scent of old stone and unburnt incense, a smell that has become synonymous with sanctity. You take your place in the choir stalls, the wood hard beneath you. The chanting begins, a low, resonant murmur that slowly fills the vast space. It's a sound that seems to vibrate through your very bones, a powerful, ancient melody that has echoed through these walls for centuries. The words are Latin, ancient, and sacred, and even if your mind occasionally drifts, the rhythm, the shared breath of your brothers, pulls you back into the collective prayer. This isn't just singing, it's a form of meditation, a way to harmonize your spirit with the divine. You feel a profound connection, not just to those around you, but to all the monks who have chanted these same words in this very spot across generations. After the early prayers, the work begins. For many monks, a significant portion of the day was dedicated to manual labor. This wasn't merely about sustenance, it was a spiritual discipline in itself. Saint Benedict, whose rule guided countless monasteries, emphasized the dignity of labor, viewing it as a means of combating idleness, fostering humility, and connecting with the physical world. If you were in a large abbey, you might find yourself in the fields, your hands calloused from gripping a hoe or a scythe. The sun, when it appears, warms your back as you till the soil, plant seeds, or harvest crops. The rhythm of the work is repetitive, almost hypnotic, allowing your mind to wander and contemplate while your body engages in purposeful activity. You feel the earth beneath your feet, smell the rich, damp soil, and hear the buzzing of insects. It's a stark contrast to the quiet intellectual work of the scriptorium, yet equally vital to the monastic economy and spiritual health. You might find a strange satisfaction in the simple act of pulling weeds, feeling a connection to the very ground that sustains you. Or perhaps you are in the monastery's kitchen, preparing meals for the community. The warmth from the fire is a welcome change from the chill of the chapel, and the aroma of baking bread or simmering vegetables fills the air. You might be kneading dough, chopping vegetables, or tending to a bubbling cauldron. This isn't gourmet cooking. It's about providing simple, nourishing food for your brothers. Every task is performed with meticulous care, an act of service and a form of prayer. You learn to appreciate the simplicity of your diet, the plain flavors of wholesome ingredients, a stark contrast to the rich, spiced foods of the noble courts. You might even find yourself humming a quiet tune as you work, a silent melody that underscores the sacredness of even the most mundane tasks. The repetitive motion of slicing vegetables or stirring a pot can become a form of moving meditation, a way to quiet the mind and center your focus. If your talents lay elsewhere, you might be in the scriptorium, the heart of intellectual life in many monasteries. Here, bathed in the soft, diffused light from tall windows, you would spend hours meticulously copying texts. The scratching of quills on parchment is the dominant sound, a gentle symphony of scholarship. You are not just a copyist, you are a conservator of knowledge, preserving ancient Greek and Roman texts, theological treatises, and liturgical books. Each letter is formed with precision, each illumination carefully painted. This work demands immense patience, unwavering focus, and a steady hand. One slip of the quill, one drop of ink, and hours of work could be ruined. You learn to cherish the solitude of this space, the quiet hum of concentration, and the tangible sense of connecting with scholars from centuries past. The parchment itself is a precious commodity, often made from animal skin, smoothed and prepared with great care. You might find yourself marveling at the intricate designs and vibrant colors used in the more elaborate initial letters, wondering about the monk who first created them. Historians still marvel at the sheer dedication it took to produce these hand copied works, given the limited tools and lighting available. Beyond these common duties, monasteries had a surprising variety of tasks. Some monks were skilled craftsmen, working as blacksmiths, carpenters, or masons, contributing to the construction and maintenance of the abbey. Others might be tending to the sick in the infirmary, acting as early forms of nurses or apothecaries, brewing herbal remedies from the monastery garden. Imagine the delicate work of grinding herbs, mixing poultices, and comforting a feverish brother. Still others might be responsible for the abbey's economy, managing its lands, overseeing trade, or even brewing beer or wine. After all, someone had to keep the brothers hydrated. Right, though perhaps not too hydrated, lest the chanting lose its solemnity. The diversity of skills within a single monastic community was often remarkable, turning the monastery into a self-sufficient ecosystem, a miniature society operating independently of the outside world. This varied work kept your hands busy, your mind engaged, and prevented the creeping tendrils of boredom that could exacerbate feelings of isolation. The silence, as mentioned before, is an ever-present companion. Beyond the designated times for speech, communication is kept to a minimum. This isn't a punitive measure but a spiritual discipline designed to curb gossip, foster introspection, and encourage a constant awareness of God's presence. You learn to communicate through gestures, through knowing glances, through the subtle shifting of your posture. A raised eyebrow might convey exasperation, a slight nod, understanding. You become acutely attuned to nonverbal cues, developing a silent language with your brothers. It forces you to listen more intently, to observe more carefully, and to choose your rare words with greater deliberation. You might find yourself more aware of the sounds around you, the rustle of leaves outside the window, the distant bleating of sheep, the gentle drip of water in the courtyard fountain. Your inner world, deprived of external chatter, expands, becoming a landscape for contemplation. This enforced silence can be profoundly challenging, especially for those accustomed to constant conversation. But it also creates a unique sense of shared purpose and quiet camaraderie amongst the monks. Yet, this intense focus on the inner world, combined with the rigorous routine and physical isolation, often led to profound psychological challenges. One of the most insidious was acedia, a spiritual dryness or despondency that could afflict monks, particularly those who had been in the monastery for a long time. It's more than just boredom or laziness. It's a deep weariness of the soul, a feeling of being utterly drained and disconnected from God, from your vows, and from your brothers. Imagine waking up each day feeling an overwhelming apathy, a sense that your prayers are meaningless, your work pointless, and your spiritual journey futile. It was often described as the noonday demon because it was thought to be most potent in the quiet, empty hours of the afternoon. You might feel an intense restlessness, a desire to escape, to leave the monastery and return to the world, even though you know such thoughts are temptations. This spiritual struggle was a real and constant threat, capable of undermining a monk's entire vocation. Monastic writings describe Acedia in vivid detail, portraying it as a battle against one's own mind. You might find yourself unable to concentrate during prayer, your thoughts scattering like autumn leaves in the wind. The silence that was once comforting now feels oppressive, magnifying every doubt, every internal whisper of discontent. You might feel irritable, resentful of the strict rules, or envious of the imagined freedom of those outside the abbey walls. This wasn't a sin in itself, but rather a dangerous spiritual state that could lead to sin if not properly addressed. The fathers of the desert, early Christian hermits, wrote extensively about combating acedia, recommending remedies like intense manual labor, short, fervent prayers, and spiritual direction from an elder. They understood that the mind, left unchecked in solitude, could become its own greatest tormentor. This historical detail, often glossed over, paints a more complex and human picture of monastic life than the purely serene image often portrayed. To cope with acedia and other forms of mental and spiritual distress, monks engaged in various practices. One was intense prayer, not just the communal chanting, but personal, fervent prayer in the solitude of your cell. You would pour out your heart to God, confessing your struggles, seeking strength and guidance. Another crucial coping mechanism was lectio divina, or divine reading, which we touched on before. This wasn't about speed reading, it was a slow amde meditative engagement with scripture. You would read a passage, reflect on it deeply, allow it to speak to your soul, and then respond to God in prayer. It was a way to fill your mind with divine truth, pushing out the negative thoughts and temptations. This practice provided a profound connection to the divine, a direct line to spiritual comfort in times of distress. You would find yourself returning to certain beloved passages, drawing strength from their timeless wisdom. Physical activity, as we noted, was also a powerful antidote. The sheer exertion of farm labor or the focused discipline of copying manuscripts could ground you in the present moment, distracting your mind from its anxious wanderings. The rhythmic nature of these tasks provided a different kind of meditation, allowing your thoughts to settle even as your body worked. Imagine the simple satisfaction of seeing a row of newly planted crops or a perfectly copied page, a tangible accomplishment that offered a sense of purpose and productivity. These small victories, accumulated over days and weeks, helped to combat the feeling of futility that acedia often brought. Communal life, despite the strict silence, also offered a degree of psychological support. While direct conversation was limited, the shared experience of daily life, the unspoken understanding among brothers who were all undergoing similar struggles, created a bond. You were part of a larger whole, a community united by a common purpose. The very presence of others, even in silence, could be comforting, a silent affirmation that you were not truly alone in your struggles. The shared meals, the shared prayers, the shared labor, these rituals reinforced the sense of belonging, a subtle but powerful bulwark against profound loneliness. You might catch the eye of a brother during a long service, and in that brief exchange, find a silent acknowledgement of shared endurance, a fleeting moment of human connection that spoke volumes without a single word. A unique, perhaps even quirky, detail often found in monasteries was the use of signs or a simple sign language. Since many orders observed strict vows of silence for much of the day, monks developed intricate systems of hand gestures to communicate essential needs. You wouldn't just speak, you would gesture for bread, for a pen, for a book. This wasn't a universal language, but rather varied from monastery to monastery, a localized lexicon of silent communication. Imagine learning dozens, even hundreds, of specific hand signals just to navigate your daily life. It's a testament to human ingenuity in adapting to restrictive environments, finding ways to maintain efficiency and a semblance of communication without breaking sacred vows. This sign language, while practical, also added another layer of quiet ritual to monastic life, a silent dance of daily interactions. However, despite these coping mechanisms, The debate continues among historians about the true psychological impact of such extreme isolation on all monks. While many undoubtedly found spiritual enlightenment and peace, it's fair to assume that, for some, the relentless solitude and the constant internal battle with acedia might have led to profound distress or even mental breakdown. The historical records often focus on the pious and the successful, but the human cost, the silent struggles of those who perhaps faltered, is largely unrecorded. This open academic question reminds us that even in the pursuit of the divine, humanity's vulnerabilities remain. We can speculate, we can empathize, but the full emotional landscape of these isolated lives remains a subject of ongoing discussion. Ultimately, your life as a medieval monk is a masterclass in resilience. You learn to find peace in silence, purpose in repetition, and solace in the divine. The isolation, though challenging, becomes a crucible in which your spirit is refined. You learn to confront your inner demons, to cultivate inner strength, and to find profound connection even in the absence of constant external stimuli. You become acutely aware of the subtle shifts in your own mind, the ebb and flow of thoughts and emotions, learning to navigate your internal landscape with a newfound clarity. It is a life of paradoxes, communal yet solitary, restrictive yet liberating, outwardly simple yet inwardly complex. And in this deliberate embrace of isolation, you forge a path to a deeper understanding of yourself, of humanity, and of God. The very stones of the monastery seem to absorb and reflect the centuries of human striving, making your own journey part of a timeless narrative. The sun, a slow, patient artist, begins to paint the eastern sky with hues of rose and gold as you make your way back to the chapel for prime. Even after hours of labor or study, the spiritual duties remain paramount. Your body might ache from the cold or the strain of manual work. Your eyes might sting from the dim light of the scriptorium, but your spirit is constantly called back to the divine. This isn't a quick check in with the Almighty. It's a sustained, deliberate act of worship woven throughout the fabric of your day. The air in the chapel, still cool and imbued with the scent of old stone and beeswax, holds a particular sanctity. You stand with your brothers, a silent legion of devotion, offering up the early hours of the day to prayer. The rhythmic cadence of the chants fills the space, a familiar comfort that has settled deep into your bones. Beyond the communal prayers, a significant portion of your day, particularly after the morning offices, is dedicated to silent contemplation. This isn't an empty silence, it's a rich, pregnant void meant to be filled with the presence of God. You might return to your cell, a Spartan space designed to minimize distraction, or find a quiet corner in the cloister garden, perhaps beside the gurgling fountain. You settle into a posture of stillness, seeking to quiet the incessant chatter of your own mind. Imagine trying to empty your thoughts, to shed the concerns of the day, the aches in your body, the memories of the world outside, and simply be. This is profoundly difficult, a continuous battle against the restless human mind. Yet, it is in this struggle that growth occurs. You learn to observe your thoughts without judgment, allowing them to pass like clouds in the sky, always returning your focus to the breath, to a sacred word, or to the imagined presence of the divine. This isn't meditation in the modern, purely secular sense. It's infused with a deep theological purpose. You are seeking to deepen your personal relationship with God, to listen for His voice in the quiet depths of your being. Sometimes, the silence might feel heavy, oppressive, magnifying every doubt, every internal whisper of loneliness. Other times, a profound sense of peace might descend, a feeling of being utterly connected to something vast and eternal. This ebb and flow is part of the journey. You learn patience, perseverance, and a profound self awareness. The more time you spend in this quiet communion, the more attuned you become to the subtle movements of your own spirit, learning to distinguish between genuine inspiration and mere distraction. It's a bit like trying to catch a whisper in a noisy room. You have to train yourself to listen intently, to filter out the extraneous sounds. For many monks, this silent time was intertwined with Lectio Divina, which we briefly touched upon. This unique practice of divine reading was far more than just reading the Bible. It was a method of engaging with sacred texts in a way that transformed the reader. You wouldn't just read a passage quickly, you would approach it with reverence, slowly, allowing each word to resonate. The first step, lectio, is simply reading, absorbing the words. Then comes meditatio, where you chew on the words, pondering their meaning, perhaps even committing them to memory. You might repeat a phrase over and over, letting its sound and sense permeate your consciousness. Imagine spending an hour contemplating a single verse, allowing its truth to unfold within you. This is where the wisdom of the text begins to inform your very being. Following meditatio is oratio, which is prayer. This is your personal response to what you have read and meditated upon. It's a dialogue with God, where you express your understanding, your feelings, your questions, and your petitions. It's an authentic, heartfelt conversation, not a rote recitation. Finally, comes contemplatio, the culminating stage, where you simply rest in the presence of God. Here, words and thoughts fade away, and you experience a direct, wordless communion with the divine. It's a moment of pure grace, a profound peace that transcends all understanding. This cycle of reading, meditating, praying, and resting in God's presence was a continuous loop, deepening your spiritual life with each iteration. It was a lifeline in the solitude, a constant source of renewal and connection when external connections were few. This four-step process, though appearing simple, was a lifelong discipline, requiring immense dedication and a profound desire for spiritual union. The pursuit of this inner peace was not without its internal battles. Beyond acedia, which we explored in the last chapter, monks often grappled with other forms of spiritual and psychological distress: envy, pride, gluttony. Yes, even in a monastery with simple food, and lust were all considered temptations that could arise in the quiet of the cell. The very solitude that was meant to foster spiritual growth could also become a breeding ground for these internal struggles, as the mind, left to its own devices, often turned inward with a magnifying glass. You might find yourself comparing your spiritual progress to that of another brother, a subtle surge of envy rising within you, or you might wrestle with thoughts of food, even after a simple meal, a reminder of the persistent nature of human desires. One particular historical detail that highlights the internal struggle, the concept of demons of the desert, popularized by the Desert Fathers, early Christian hermits whose writings heavily influenced monasticism. These demons weren't always literal horned creatures. Often, they were understood as internal temptations, negative thoughts, and psychological states personified as external forces trying to derail your spiritual progress. Imagine a persistent thought whispering doubts in your ear, urging you to leave the monastery, to indulge in worldly pleasures, or to despair of your salvation. These were the demons you battled daily, not with a sword, but with prayer, fasting, and unwavering faith. The texts provided vivid descriptions of these internal adversaries, offering strategies for recognizing and overcoming them. This framing allowed monks to externalize their internal struggles, making them feel more manageable, less like personal failures and more like a shared spiritual combat. Historians still debate the extent to which these demons represented genuine psychological disorders or purely spiritual phenomena. The daily routine, though rigorous, became a form of psychological anchor, a predictable structure in an otherwise turbulent inner world. The bells marking the hours of prayer, the designated times for work and study, the silent meals. These consistent rhythms provided a sense of order and purpose. You knew what was expected of you at every moment, reducing the mental fatigue of decision making. This predictability, while seemingly restrictive, could be profoundly comforting, a stable framework within which your spiritual journey unfolded. It's a bit like having a well worn path through a dense forest. You know the way, even if the journey is still challenging. This predictable routine minimized distractions, allowing your mental energy to be directed towards spiritual growth rather than the mundane logistics of daily life. To further aid in their spiritual and psychological well being, many monasteries cultivated extensive herb gardens and infirmaries. While modern medicine was centuries away, monks were often at the forefront of herbal knowledge and basic care. You might find yourself in the infirmary, tending to a sick brother, applying poultices made from herbs grown in the monastery's own garden, the quiet hum of activity in the infirmary, the gentle murmurs of comfort, the earthy scent of medicinal plants. These elements created a haven for healing. Monks would study ancient texts on medicinal plants, experiment with different concoctions, and develop a practical understanding of how to alleviate suffering. This practical skill provided another layer of purpose to monastic life, allowing you to serve your community in a tangible way. Consider the meticulous process of brewing herbal teas or concocting tinctures from scratch. You would gather the herbs, dry them, grind them, and then carefully measure them, following recipes passed down through generations. This precise work, demanding attention to detail and a deep understanding of the plant's properties, was a form of meditative practice in itself. The knowledge of these remedies was often kept within the monastery, making them important centers of healing for the local populace as well. It's a remarkable detail that these communities, dedicated to spiritual matters, also served a vital practical role in the health and well being of medieval society. You might even discover a surprising aptitude for identifying rare plants or understanding their subtle effects, becoming a valued resource within your monastic community. The role of confession and spiritual direction was also vital in dealing with isolation and its accompanying challenges. You would regularly meet with your abbot or a designated elder, confessing your sins, voicing your doubts, and seeking guidance. This wasn't just about admitting wrongdoing, it was about opening your heart, being vulnerable, and receiving wisdom and absolution. In a life of profound silence, these moments of verbal exchange, though formal and structured, were invaluable. They provided an outlet for internal struggles, a chance to articulate the burdens of your soul, and to receive reassurance and direction from a seasoned spiritual guide. The abbot, as a spiritual father figure, offered a crucial human connection and served as a tangible link to the outside world's understanding of your internal journey. Historians often emphasize the importance of this spiritual mentorship, highlighting its role in maintaining mental and spiritual health within the monastic framework. The very act of living a life dedicated to God, away from the distractions of the world, was seen as a form of spiritual warfare. You were battling not just your own weaknesses, but the forces of evil that sought to draw you away from your vows. This mindset imbued every daily task, every moment of contemplation, with a profound significance. Your simple cell became a battlefield, your prayer stool a weapon. This elevated perspective helped to imbue the often monotonous routines with a deeper purpose, turning mundane acts into sacred ones. It helped to contextualize the struggles with Akidia and other temptations, framing them not as personal failings, but as part of a larger cosmic struggle for salvation. You were a soldier for Christ, and your discipline was your armor. Despite the inherent isolation, the ideal of fraternal charity and communal support remained strong. While strict silence was observed, acts of kindness, mutual assistance in labor, and shared understanding through glances and gestures fostered a deep sense of brotherhood. If a brother was struggling with an illness or visibly battling acedia, others would offer quiet support, perhaps a shared prayer, or a word of encouragement during a permitted moment of speech. This silent solidarity was a powerful antidote to true loneliness. You were never truly alone, even in your most private struggles, because you were part of a community united by shared vows and a common spiritual path. This unstated bond was perhaps one of the most crucial elements in ensuring the long term success of monastic life for so many individuals. The sense of belonging, though expressed quietly, was deeply felt, a comforting presence in the vastness of your spiritual quest. In this paradox of communal solitude, you learned that true isolation wasn't about the absence of people, but about the absence of connection. And within the monastic walls, even amidst profound quiet, you discovered deep, meaningful connections to God, to yourself, and to your fellow monk, forging a resilience that allowed you not just to endure, but to thrive in your chosen path of devotion. This journey of internal discovery, fueled by discipline and sustained by faith, transformed the seemingly miserable isolation into a fertile ground for profound spiritual transformation. You discovered reserves of strength you never knew you possessed, and a capacity for inner peace that transcended your physical surroundings. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the cloister courtyard, your day continues its inexorable march, driven by the rhythmic tolling of bells and the unwavering call to duty. The hours following terce might find you immersed in scholarly pursuits, or perhaps engaged in tasks that connect the monastery more directly with the outside world. This isn't just about prayer, it's about the practical application of faith, the quiet work that sustains both body and soul within the monastic walls. For many monks, especially those in larger, more influential abbeys, a significant portion of the day was dedicated to the preservation and creation of knowledge. The scriptorium, as mentioned, was the intellectual powerhouse of the monastery, a beacon of literacy in a largely illiterate age. You might find yourself hunched over a heavy wooden desk, parchment stretched taut before you, a quill scratching softly as you copy a theological treatise, a classical text, or perhaps even a medicinal manuscript. The concentration required is immense. Each letter must be formed with precision, each line straight, each page free from error. Imagine the painstaking effort of copying an entire book by hand, a process that could take months, even years, for a single volume. This wasn't mere transcription, it was an act of profound dedication. You are not just reproducing words, you are transmitting knowledge across generations, ensuring that the wisdom of the past survives the ravages of time. The ink, often made from gallnuts and iron salts, would be prepared by hand, its smell a familiar companion. The parchment, carefully cured animal hide, felt smooth and cool beneath your fingers. The process itself was a form of meditation, the rhythmic movement of your hand, a steadying force for your mind. You might occasionally feel a cramp in your fingers or a strain in your eyes from the flickering lamplight in the darker months, but the significance of the work propelled you onward. This was a direct contribution to the intellectual heritage of humanity, a quiet act of defiance against the forces of decay and forgetfulness. Beyond copying, some monks were also illuminators, artists who adorned texts with intricate miniature paintings and decorative initial letters. If you possessed such a talent, your work would be even more painstaking, requiring fine brushes, vibrant pigments derived from ground minerals and plants, and an artist's eye for detail. Imagine painting a tiny, delicate scene from the Bible or a fantastical beast within the confines of a single initial letter, bringing the sacred text to life with color and imagery. These illuminations weren't just pretty pictures, they served to emphasize key passages, to aid in understanding for those who might struggle with the Latin, and to elevate the beauty of the sacred word itself. The sheer patience and skill required for this work are almost unfathomable in our age of instant digital art. You would lose yourself in the minute details, your breath held, your hand steady, creating a small masterpiece on each page. A lesser known, yet incredibly important, aspect of the monastic role in preserving knowledge was the creation of glosses and commentaries. Monks didn't just copy texts, they often engaged with them critically. You might find yourself adding marginal notes, explanations, or interpretations known as glosses to the texts you were copying, thereby contributing to a growing body of scholarly understanding. These glosses could be grammatical, theological, or historical, illuminating difficult passages or connecting different ideas. This demonstrates that monastic life wasn't just about rote memorization or blind obedience. It fostered a vibrant intellectual culture where critical thinking and scholarly inquiry were valued. These marginalia were the medieval equivalent of our modern day academic peer review, a quiet conversation across centuries, enriching the original texts with new insights. One particularly fascinating and often surprising aspect of monastic life was the emphasis on practical skills and innovation. While dedicated to spiritual pursuits, monasteries were also centers of agricultural development, brewing, winemaking, and even engineering. They often pioneered new farming techniques, developed sophisticated irrigation systems, or improved livestock breeding. Imagine a monk, perhaps yourself, carefully charting the patterns of the moon to determine optimal planting times, or designing a more efficient water mill to grind grain for the community. These practical innovations weren't seen as distractions from spiritual life, but as an integral part of responsible stewardship of God's creation and a means of ensuring the monastery's self sufficiency. They were the Silicon Valley startups of their day, only with less venture capital and more vows of poverty. The ingenuity displayed by some monastic communities in fields like hydrology or animal husbandry still impresses historians today, showcasing a blend of piety and pragmatism. The monastic library was the heart of this intellectual activity. Imagine entering a large hall, lined with wooden shelves, each one groaning under the weight of precious manuscripts. The air would be cool, dry, and filled with the faint, comforting scent of old parchment and leather bindings. You would move carefully among the shelves, perhaps retrieving a theological treatise for study or a collection of herbal remedies. These libraries were not just repositories of books, they were living centers of learning, where monks would spend hours in silent study, deepening their understanding of scripture, philosophy, and various branches of medieval knowledge. The acquisition of new texts, often through careful copying or even exchange with other monasteries, was a celebrated event, a further enrichment of the community's intellectual resources. You felt a profound sense of privilege to be surrounded by such accumulated wisdom, a tangible connection to generations of scholars before you. However, the constant mental strain of such intense study, combined with the physical austerity and profound isolation, could lead to its own unique challenges. One common struggle, as we've seen, was acedia, but another subtle adversary was intellectual pride. In a community where knowledge was so highly valued, it was tempting to become proud of one's own scholarly achievements, to view oneself as superior to less educated brothers. This subtle form of self aggrandizement was a constant spiritual danger, as it contradicted the monastic ideals of humility and self effacement. You might find yourself secretly critiquing a brother's handwriting or silently correcting a mistake in a text you were reading, feeling a subtle surge of intellectual superiority. These internal temptations were as insidious as any external one, requiring constant vigilance and self correction. Historians still openly debate the extent to which monastic scholarship genuinely fostered intellectual freedom versus adhering strictly to theological dogma. While monks preserved ancient texts, their interpretations were often constrained by the prevailing religious doctrines of the time. Did the pursuit of knowledge lead to genuine innovation? Or was it primarily about the faithful transmission of established wisdom? This is an intriguing question, as it touches upon the very nature of intellectual inquiry within a deeply spiritual and hierarchical framework. You, as a monk, would navigate this delicate balance, seeking truth within the confines of accepted theological understanding, perhaps occasionally wrestling with the tension between personal insight and established doctrine. The monastic community also had a vital role in hospitality and charity. While your personal life within the cloister was isolated, the monastery itself was often a hub for travelers, pilgrims, and the poor. You might be assigned duties in the guest house, where you would receive visitors with humble hospitality, offering them food, shelter, and comfort. This was seen as an act of profound Christian charity, welcoming Christ in the person of the stranger. Imagine receiving a weary pilgrim, covered in dust from a long journey, and offering them a warm meal and a clean bed. These interactions, though brief, provided a rare window into the world outside the monastery walls, a fleeting connection to the broader tapestry of medieval life. You heard stories from distant lands, gained glimpses of different customs, and were reminded that even in your chosen isolation, you served a vital purpose for those beyond the gates. Another aspect of monastic charity was the care for the sick and the poor in the immediate vicinity. Monasteries often maintained almonries, where food and alms were distributed to the needy. You might be involved in preparing bread or gruel for distribution, or perhaps tending to the basic medical needs of the local villagers who came seeking aid. This hands on service was a powerful reminder of your vows of poverty and compassion, preventing the monastic life from becoming too insular or detached from the suffering of the world. It was a tangible expression of Christian love, extending the monastery's spiritual mission into practical acts of mercy. This direct engagement with the suffering of others provided a powerful counterpoint to the internal focus of prayer and contemplation, grounding your spiritual journey in the realities of human need. The physical layout of the monastery itself reinforced the blend of communal life and individual isolation. The cloister, with its central courtyard and covered walkways, was designed for quiet contemplation and movement. It was a liminal space, a transition zone between the private cells and the communal areas, between the inner life of prayer and the outer life of work. You would walk its silent paths, perhaps reciting prayers, meditating on scripture, or simply enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. The repetition of these walks, the familiar sight of the central garden, contributed to a sense of order and tranquility. It was a place where individual monks could experience solitude while still being within the embrace of the community, a living symbol of their paradoxically communal isolation. Sometimes, the challenges of isolation manifested in subtle ways. A monk might develop a particular attachment to a single object, or find solace in a repetitive, almost obsessive, personal ritual. These small habits, while seemingly harmless, could be seen as deviations from the ideal of detachment and complete devotion. The monastic rule was designed to strip away all such worldly attachments, to foster a freedom from material desires. This constant internal vigilance against even subtle forms of attachment was part of the ongoing spiritual discipline, a continuous process of self purification. You were always, in a sense, under internal scrutiny, examining your own motives and desires, seeking to align them perfectly with your vows. The life of a medieval monk, then, was a tightly interwoven tapestry of spiritual devotion, intellectual rigor, physical labor, and profound internal struggle. It was a life chosen deliberately, a radical departure from the norm, driven by a deep desire for salvation and a direct encounter with the divine. The isolation, though often miserable, was also a crucible, forging a resilient spirit capable of extraordinary feats of endurance and contemplation. You, as a monk within these ancient walls, were part of a silent revolution, preserving knowledge, practicing charity, and relentlessly pursuing an inner peace that transcended the clamor of the outside world. Your life, though outwardly secluded, contributed in countless ways to the broader human story, a testament to the enduring power of faith and the quiet strength found in profound solitude. The quiet rhythm of monastic life continues, unbroken by the passing seasons or the distant rumblings of the secular world. After sect, perhaps following a simple, silent meal in the refectory, you find yourself drawn back to the pursuits that offer respite from the more arduous labors or provide a different kind of spiritual nourishment. It's in these moments, nestled between the strict liturgical hours, that the individual monk often found ways to cope with the relentless, sometimes crushing, weight of their self imposed isolation. One of the most powerful antidotes to the monotony and mental strain of monastic life was the engagement with art and beauty. While often austere, monasteries were not devoid of aesthetic appreciation. The very architecture of the abbey, with its soaring arches and intricate stonework, was designed to elevate the spirit. You would spend time in the chapel, not just for prayer, but perhaps gazing at the beautifully carved wooden altarpiece, or the vibrant hues of a stained glass window, through which the morning light streamed in a kaleidoscope of color. These visual delights, created by skilled artisans, often monks themselves, served as a tangible connection to the divine, a physical manifestation of spiritual truth. They were deliberate reminders of a transcendent beauty that existed beyond the harsh realities of daily life, offering a profound sense of awe and wonder. Consider the meticulous craftsmanship involved in creating these works. A monk might spend years carving a single statue, his hands worn smooth by the tools, his mind focused intently on bringing form to wood or stone. The process itself was a form of prayer, each stroke of the chisel an act of devotion. Similarly, the illumination of manuscripts, which we touched on before, was an artistic endeavor of the highest order. Imagine mixing pigments from crushed lapis lazuli for a brilliant blue, or from crushed insects for a deep red, then applying them with a delicate brush to create tiny, intricate scenes that shimmered with life. This work was not for personal glory, but for the greater glory of God and the enrichment of the sacred texts. It provided a powerful outlet for creative energy, a way to express devotion and counteract the potentially dulling effects of routine. The focus required for such detailed work could be profoundly meditative, pulling you fully into the present moment and away from internal anxieties. Beyond the formal arts, monks often found solace in the natural world immediately surrounding the monastery. The cloister garden, which we've mentioned, was a sanctuary of peace, a meticulously tended microcosm of creation. You might spend hours observing the life cycles of plants, the industriousness of bees, or the delicate unfurling of a new leaf, the simple beauty of a blooming rose, the scent of lavender on a warm breeze, the gentle sound of a gurgling fountain. These sensory details offered a profound connection to the living world, a gentle reminder of the constant renewal of life. For a mind accustomed to profound silence, these subtle natural sounds and sights became magnified, offering a rich tapestry of sensory experience. This connection to nature was not just aesthetic, it was theological. Seeing God's hand in every leaf and every creature, it was a powerful counterpoint to the enclosed, man made environment of the abbey, allowing your spirit to breathe and expand. A particularly fascinating, though often overlooked, detail is how some monasteries became centers for the study and cultivation of unique flora. Monks, being self sufficient, often experimented with different agricultural practices and cultivated rare medicinal or ornamental plants. You might find yourself meticulously cross referencing ancient botanical texts with your own observations, trying to grow a new variety of herb or perfecting a particular grafting technique for fruit trees. This scientific curiosity, blended with practical necessity and spiritual reflection, turned the monastic garden into a living laboratory. This intellectual engagement with the natural world provided a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose, broadening your understanding of creation beyond the confines of theological doctrine. Historians, in fact, credit many monastic orders with preserving and developing agricultural knowledge throughout the Middle Ages, effectively acting as early botanists and agronomists. In moments of rare, sanctioned recreation, monks might engage in quiet activities like reading secular texts if available and permitted by the abbot, or perhaps even playing simple board games like tables and ancestor of backgammon or chess, albeit in a disciplined and non gambling fashion. These were not frivolous pastimes but carefully regulated activities meant to offer a brief mental diversion and foster a controlled form of social interaction. Imagine a rare evening when the abbot permits a quiet game of chess in the common room, the only sounds being the gentle click of wooden pieces and the occasional hushed murmur. These small allowances, carefully rationed, helped to prevent the buildup of mental fatigue and provided a subtle outlet for the human need for recreation, without compromising the overall monastic discipline. However, even in these moments of quiet enjoyment, the underlying challenge of isolation often remained. The joy of the art, the peace of the garden, the brief relief of a game. These were fleeting moments that punctuated a life largely defined by solitude. The human need for meaningful connection, for conversation, for shared laughter was largely suppressed. This suppression, while intended to foster spiritual detachment, could also lead to a quiet, persistent ache of loneliness. You might find yourself observing the silent interactions of your brothers, a pang of longing for more spontaneous camaraderie passing through you. This subtle emotional landscape, the unexpressed yearnings, formed an invisible undercurrent to the outward serenity of monastic life. One of the more poignant human elements of monastic life was the rare and often deeply cherished letter from the outside world. While contact was severely limited, an occasional letter from family or former friends might arrive, painstakingly delivered by a passing merchant or pilgrim. Imagine the feeling of receiving such a letter, the rough parchment in your hand, the familiar script, offering a fleeting glimpse into the lives you had left behind. These letters, often read in the privacy of your cell, would bring a mix of emotions, nostalgia, perhaps a touch of sadness for what was lost, but also a renewed sense of purpose in your chosen path. They were a vivid reminder of the world you had renounced, and a test of your detachment. You might pause, perhaps for a long moment, before opening it, knowing the bittersweet memories it might evoke. Historians still discuss the delicate balance medieval monastic rules struck between necessary isolation for spiritual growth and the inherent human need for connection. Some argue that the extreme detachment, while fostering deep contemplative experiences for some, may have been psychologically detrimental for others. The individual resilience of each monk was paramount. Did the structure of monastic life truly transcend human needs for social interaction, or did it simply suppress them, leading to unrecorded internal suffering? This remains an open and fascinating question, reminding us of the complex human element beneath the seemingly rigid historical facade. You, as a monk, would navigate this subtle tension daily, striving for detachment while still possessing a human heart. The small, everyday comforts also played a surprisingly significant role in coping with isolation. The warmth of a fire in the common room during winter, the simple satisfaction of a well baked loaf of bread, the scent of fresh beeswax as candles were prepared for services. These mundane sensory details became amplified in a life stripped of grander pleasures. You learned to find profound contentment in the simplest things, a practice that contrasted sharply with the worldly pursuit of luxury and excess. This ability to derive joy from the ordinary was a powerful spiritual lesson, a form of gratitude that deeply enriched your internal world. You would savor the fleeting warmth of a sunbeam on a cold stone wall, or the comforting scent of wood smoke from the kitchen, finding in these tiny moments a quiet contentment. In the solitary hours of the night, when the monastery was steeped in a deep, pervasive quiet, you might find yourself reflecting on your journey, on the choices that led you to this life. The silence of the night, unbroken, save for the hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the wind, could be both daunting and profoundly peaceful. It was in these hours that many monks felt a heightened sense of God's presence, a direct, unmediated communion that transcended words. The stars, brilliant and countless in the vast medieval sky, seemed closer, more immediate, a celestial tapestry whispering of divine mysteries. You were a tiny speck in the grand cosmos, yet intimately connected to its boundless order. This cosmic perspective offered a profound antidote to the feeling of personal isolation, reminding you of your place within a larger, divine plan. Ultimately, the medieval monks dealing with miserable isolation was a complex dance between discipline and human needs. They found solace in art, in nature, in the quiet pursuit of knowledge, and in the fleeting, cherished moments of connection. These were not easy lives, but they were lives of profound purpose, chosen for a spiritual quest that demanded immense resilience and a deep understanding of the human spirit's capacity for both suffering and transcendence. You, living this life, become a testament to the enduring power of faith to shape, sustain, and ultimately elevate the human experience, even in the most challenging of circumstances. The quiet strength you cultivated in isolation became a lasting legacy, a beacon for future generations seeking profound meaning in a chaotic world. The bell for nones has long since faded, its echoes absorbed by the ancient stone walls, and the afternoon stretches before you, a vast canvas for contemplation and further work. By now, the rhythm of monastic life has seeped into your very bones. You move with a purpose born of discipline, your actions often automatic, leaving your mind free to engage in deeper spiritual pursuits. Yet, even as routine becomes second nature, the silent struggle with isolation and its accompanying psychological challenges remains a constant, subtle undertone. One of the more profound ways monks dealt with the mental strain of isolation was through the rigorous practice of self discipline and asceticism. This wasn't about self punishment for its own sake, but rather a deliberate training of the will, a way to master the body and its desires so that the spirit could soar unhindered. Imagine willingly embracing a diet of simple, often bland food, enduring cold in winter and heat in summer, or sleeping on a hard, unyielding surface. These acts, though physically uncomfortable, were seen as crucial for spiritual growth. They were designed to detach you from worldly comforts, to remind you that true satisfaction lay not in material possessions, but in union with God. You learn to embrace discomfort, not just tolerate it, seeing it as a tool for spiritual refinement. This often included strict fasting, periods where you would abstain from certain foods, or even from all food for a designated time. While challenging, fasting was believed to sharpen the mind, purify the body, and make you more receptive to spiritual insights. It was a way to exercise control over your appetites, a constant reminder that your spiritual well being was paramount. You might feel the pangs of hunger, but you would offer them up as a sacrifice, transforming physical discomfort into spiritual merit. This rigorous self control became a powerful psychological tool, demonstrating to yourself that you were capable of mastering your own desires, a potent antidote to feelings of helplessness or despair that isolation might sometimes bring. Beyond personal asceticism, the monastic brotherhood itself, though largely silent, played a crucial role in providing a framework for endurance. While individual isolation was profound, you were never truly alone. You were always within the embrace of a community, a brotherhood united by shared vows and a common spiritual quest. This collective purpose was a powerful antidote to debilitating loneliness. Even during silent meals in the refectory, the presence of your fellow monks, their quiet breathing, the subtle clinking of their utensils, all contributed to a sense of shared existence. You were part of a larger whole, a silent army of God, and that unspoken solidarity was deeply comforting. Consider the moments during communal prayer in the chapel, as you chant alongside your brothers, your voices blending into a single, resonant harmony. You feel a profound sense of unity. You are not just praying as an individual, you are participating in a collective act of worship that transcends time and space. This shared spiritual endeavor created an invisible bond, a powerful sense of belonging that mitigated the harshness of individual solitude. It was a silent affirmation that you were supported, understood, and part of something far greater than yourself. This communal identity was crucial in preventing the feeling of being utterly abandoned or adrift. A particularly insightful historical detail, often overlooked in popular narratives, is the emphasis on humility and obedience as coping mechanisms. The rule of Saint Benedict, which guided most Western monasteries, placed immense importance on these virtues. You were expected to obey your abbot without question, to humble yourself before your brothers, and to constantly strive for self effacement. This wasn't about crushing the individual spirit, rather, it was seen as a way to liberate the monk from the tyranny of their own ego, from the constant demands of their own desires and opinions. By submitting your will to the community and to God, you found a different kind of freedom, a release from the burdens of self reliance. This external submission, paradoxically, could lead to profound inner peace, as it removed the weight of individual decision making and placed it in the hands of a trusted spiritual authority. Historians still debate the fine line between healthy obedience and potential suppression of individual conscience in some monastic contexts. The simple, predictable structure of the monastic day also offered a powerful form of psychological grounding. Every hour was accounted for, every task assigned. This lack of ambiguity, this clear framework for existence, reduced the mental energy required for decision making and planning. You knew exactly what you needed to do, when you needed to do it, and where. In a world full of uncertainty and external chaos, the monastery offered a haven of order. This predictability, while seemingly rigid, could be profoundly comforting, acting as a stable anchor for the mind amidst the vast sea of internal contemplation. It was a constant, gentle reassurance that your life had purpose and structure, preventing the aimlessness that often accompanies deep isolation. However, even with these robust coping mechanisms, the human element was undeniable. The silent struggles with loneliness, doubt, and temptation were constant companions. Monastic chronicles occasionally record instances of monks who struggled immensely, even to the point of leaving the order. These stories, though less prominent, remind us that the monastic path was not for the faint of heart and that human vulnerability was ever present, even in the most disciplined of environments. The choice to remain, to persevere through these inner trials, was a testament to extraordinary faith and resilience. In moments of extreme mental or spiritual distress, a monk might seek out the spiritual counsel of the abbot or a designated elder. These were not casual conversations, but serious, structured encounters where you could articulate your struggles, confess your doubts, and seek guidance. The abbot, acting as a spiritual father, would listen patiently, offer scriptural wisdom, and provide a framework for understanding and overcoming your challenges. These moments of human connection, though formal and infrequent, were vital lifelines, providing a safe space to unload the burdens of your soul and receive validation and direction. It was a powerful reminder that even in the midst of profound isolation, you were not abandoned, and that wisdom and support were available within the community. The monastic commitment to poverty also served a psychological purpose. By stripping away material possessions, monks aimed to free themselves from attachment to worldly goods, which could be a source of anxiety, envy, and distraction. Your cell contained only the bare essentials: a straw pallet, a stool, a crucifix. There were no personal trinkets, no luxuries, nothing to cling to. This deliberate dispossession was meant to cultivate an inner freedom, a lightness of spirit that was unburdened by material concerns. While challenging, this detachment could paradoxically lead to a profound sense of inner wealth, as your focus shifted from external acquisitions to internal spiritual treasures. You learned to value experiences over possessions, finding richness in simplicity. Consider the physical act of wearing a simple, unadorned habit. There were no fine silks, no elaborate embroidery, no outward signs of status. Everyone wore the same rough woolen cloth, symbolizing equality and humility. This uniform appearance reinforced the idea that all monks were equal in the eyes of God, stripping away individualistic distinctions. It fostered a sense of unity and minimized opportunities for envy or pride related to outward appearances. This visible commitment to humility was a constant reminder of your vows and a subtle but powerful way to maintain focus on your spiritual journey rather than worldly appearances. Furthermore, the act of daily confession, even for seemingly minor transgressions or troublesome thoughts, provided a crucial psychological release. By regularly articulating your internal struggles and perceived failings, you prevented them from festering and growing into larger burdens. This continuous process of self examination and repentance, coupled with the absolution offered by the abbot, helped to maintain mental and spiritual hygiene. It was a way to constantly recalibrate your moral compass, to acknowledge imperfections, and to reaffirm your commitment to the monastic ideal. This regular internal cleansing was a vital practice for maintaining mental well being in an isolated environment. Historians still openly debate the true extent of mental health awareness in medieval monasteries. While they didn't have our modern diagnostic categories, they certainly recognized and addressed spiritual and psychological distress through their unique frameworks of sin, temptation, and spiritual discipline. Were their methods effective in all cases, or did some monks suffer in silence, their struggles unrecorded? This question highlights the limitations of historical sources and encourages us to consider the nuanced human experience beneath the grand narratives of faith and devotion. You, as a monk, would navigate these unwritten challenges, relying on your faith, the rule, and the silent support of your brothers. to endure. In essence, the medieval monks' approach to dealing with miserable isolation was a multifaceted system of discipline, community, spiritual practice, and reliance on inner strength. They transformed outward deprivation into inward abundance, finding profound meaning and connection in a life seemingly devoid of it. The constant mental and spiritual exercise, coupled with the physical routines, created a powerful framework for resilience. You, as a part of this ancient tradition, become a living testament to the human capacity for endurance, finding a profound lasting peace in the very solitude that would challenge so many others. Your quiet life, though hidden from the bustling world, played a silent yet significant role in shaping the spiritual and intellectual landscape of centuries to come. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the western sky with fiery hues, the monastery's rhythm shifts towards the evening offices. Vespers, then Compline, usher in a deeper quiet, a profound stillness that descends with the twilight. It is in these hours, when the outside world retreats into shadow, that the monk's inner world often comes into sharper focus, and the subtle ways they manage their profound isolation become even more apparent. Beyond the prescribed hours of prayer and labor, monks found profound solace and a unique form of connection through the ritual and liturgy of the church itself. Every gesture, every chanted word, every procession within the chapel was imbued with deep, symbolic meaning. This wasn't just a routine, it was a sacred drama, a continuous reenactment of salvation history that transcended the mundane realities of daily life. Imagine the sensory experience, the rich scent of incense filling the air, the flickering glow of beeswax candles casting dancing shadows on the stone walls, the deep resonance of Gregorian chant echoing through the vaulted ceilings. These elements combine to create an immersive, almost otherworldly atmosphere. Participating in the liturgy provided a powerful sense of purpose and belonging. You were not merely an individual isolated in your cell, you were an active participant in a timeless act of worship, joining your voice with a chorus of saints and angels. This communal spiritual experience, even when largely silent, fostered a profound sense of unity. The shared ritual acted as a form of non-verbal communication, a deep, unspoken bond between you and your brothers, all moving in synchronicity towards a common spiritual goal. This sense of being part of something vast and ancient was a potent antidote to feelings of loneliness or insignificance. It's like being a single instrument in a grand orchestra. Your individual notes might be small, but together they create a magnificent symphony. A fascinating and often overlooked historical detail is the role of monastic libraries as centers for textual correction and standardization. While we've discussed their role in copying, many monasteries also undertook the arduous task of correcting errors that had crept into texts over centuries of manual transcription. You might spend hours comparing multiple versions of a biblical text or a classical work, meticulously identifying discrepancies and attempting to reconstruct the original reading. This wasn't glamorous work, but it was crucial for the integrity of knowledge. It required immense scholarly rigor, an almost obsessive attention to detail, and a deep respect for the written word. This meticulous work provided a different kind of mental engagement, a challenging puzzle that absorbed the mind and diverted it from more existential anxieties. Historians credit these quiet, diligent monks with preserving the accuracy of countless ancient texts that would otherwise have been lost or irrevocably corrupted. In the face of relentless isolation, the monastic practice of reading aloud in the refectory during meals offered a unique blend of spiritual nourishment and controlled intellectual engagement. While the monks themselves ate in silence, one brother would typically read from a spiritual text, the lives of saints, or sometimes even a historical chronicle. This allowed for a communal intake of knowledge without breaking the vow of silence for individual conversation. Imagine listening to a captivating story or a profound theological reflection as you ate your simple meal, your mind engaged even as your body was sustained. This practice prevented the mealtime from becoming a moment of purely mundane consumption, elevating it to a shared spiritual exercise. It also subtly fostered a sense of shared intellectual life, a common ground of ideas and stories that bound the community together. However, even with these structured engagements, the potential for personal internal struggles was ever present. The silence that was intended to foster contemplation could, at times, amplify internal anxieties, fears, or unresolved conflicts from your past life. Without the constant chatter of the outside world, your own thoughts became louder, more insistent. You might find yourself grappling with regrets, with temptations, or with the lingering memories of loved ones left behind. This relentless confrontation with the self was a hallmark of monastic life, and it required immense fortitude and reliance on spiritual resources. Historians still debate the extent to which monastic spiritual practices truly provided sufficient psychological support for all individuals. While many found profound peace, it's reasonable to assume that some might have experienced deeper, unaddressed mental distress, given the extreme nature of the chosen lifestyle. The medieval understanding of the mind and spirit was vastly different from our modern psychology. And what we might now diagnose as a specific mental health condition might then have been attributed to spiritual weakness or demonic temptation. This open question compels us to look at these historical figures with both admiration for their devotion and empathy for their very human struggles. The limited, yet highly significant, social interactions within the monastic community were carefully managed to support, rather than distract, from the primary spiritual mission. While general conversation was restricted, there were specific contexts where it was permitted and even encouraged. For example, during designated times for work in the fields or workshops, or during formal chapter meetings where community affairs were discussed, a controlled form of communication was allowed. These moments, though brief and purposeful, were vital for maintaining community cohesion, resolving practical issues, and allowing for necessary human interaction. You would learn to make your words count, to be concise and direct, valuing these small windows of vocal communication immensely. Another fascinating detail that reveals the nuanced approach to isolation was the practice of spiritual letter writing between abbots or influential monks from different monasteries. While individual monks rarely corresponded with the outside world, leaders of monastic orders sometimes exchanged letters on theological matters, monastic governance, or personal spiritual struggles. These letters formed a network of intellectual and spiritual support, connecting isolated communities across vast distances. Imagine the anticipation of receiving a letter from a respected abbot in a distant land, a tangible link to the broader monastic world. These correspondences demonstrate that even in an era of profound physical isolation, intellectual and spiritual communion was actively cultivated. The monastic rule, particularly the rule of St. Benedict, also provided a structured approach to dealing with conflict or tension within the community. While direct arguments were discouraged, there were clear procedures for airing grievances, seeking reconciliation, and submitting to the abbot's judgment. This formal mechanism for conflict resolution was crucial for maintaining harmony within a group of individuals living in close quarters with limited verbal interaction. It prevented resentments from festering and ensured that the community could function effectively, even when individual personalities clashed. You learn to address disagreements not with anger, but with humility and a desire for communal peace. Furthermore, the physical structure of the monastery itself offered subtle psychological support. The clear separation of spaces, the silent cells for contemplation, the communal refectory for meals, the bustling scriptorium for work, the serene cloister garden for reflection, provided a sense of order and purpose for each activity. This spatial organization helped to demarcate different aspects of your life, preventing mental clutter and fostering a focused approach to each task or spiritual exercise. You instinctively knew what was expected of you in each area, contributing to a sense of predictability and security. The consistent environment, though often austere, became a comforting, familiar backdrop to your life. 2. In the deepest hours of the night, when silence reigned supreme, monks often performed the office of vigils. Sometimes in the middle of the night, this voluntary, or occasionally mandatory, period of prayer and contemplation when the world was asleep was considered particularly efficacious. It was a time of profound solitude, where you felt closest to God, unburdened by the distractions of daylight. Imagine rising from your hard bed in the pitch darkness, making your way to the freezing chapel, and spending hours in prayer while the rest of the world slumbered. This act of self denial and unwavering devotion was a powerful affirmation of faith, a way to transcend the physical limitations of isolation and connect with the eternal. It was a time of intense personal struggle, but also of profound spiritual breakthroughs. Ultimately, the medieval monks' journey through isolation was a testament to the intricate interplay of external discipline and internal resilience. They harnessed the power of ritual, community, and intellectual pursuit to transform what might seem like miserable solitude into a crucible for profound spiritual growth. Your life as a monk, hidden from the clamor of history, played a quiet but vital role in shaping the very foundations of Western thought and culture, demonstrating the enduring human capacity to find meaning and transcendence even in the most challenging and solitary of existences. The echoes of your quiet prayers and diligent work resonate through the centuries, a testament to a life lived fully within the quiet embrace of devotion. With the quiet hours of Compline long past and the monastery shrouded in the deep, unyielding silence of night, you are left in the profound solitude of your cell. It is in these truly isolated moments, between the last prayer of the day and the first bell of matins, that a monk often confronted their deepest thoughts and, surprisingly, found ways to connect with the very world they had left behind. Monasteries, despite their secluded nature, were far from entirely cut off from the secular world. In fact, they served as crucial bridges between the cloister and the common folk, providing services that were essential to medieval society. You might find yourself, at certain times, interacting with people from outside the abbey walls, albeit in highly structured and controlled ways. One of the most common points of contact was the guest house. Pilgrims traveling across vast distances, weary merchants, or even local nobles seeking refuge or spiritual counsel would arrive at the monastery gates. You might be assigned duties in the guest house where you would offer hospitality, providing a warm meal, a clean bed, and perhaps a fresh change of clothes. This was more than just good manners, it was a deeply ingrained act of Christian charity, a fulfillment of the monastic vow of hospitality. You would welcome these strangers as if they were Christ Himself, listening to their stories, offering comfort, and providing respite from the harsh realities of medieval travel. Imagine the variety of faces you might see: a hardened knight, a fearful peasant, a learned scholar. Each brought with them a fragment of the outside world, a fleeting glimpse into lives so different from your own. These interactions, though brief and formal, were vital to preventing complete social atrophy and offered a rare opportunity for human connection, reminding you of the broader tapestry of humanity that existed beyond your stone walls. A unique and significant detail about these interactions was the exchange of news and information. While strict monastic rules often forbade idle gossip, the abbot or senior monks might engage in conversations with high ranking guests to gather intelligence about political events, famines, wars, or even new technological advancements in the outside world. Monasteries, especially larger ones, were often well informed hubs in an age before newspapers or widespread communication networks. You might hear whispers of distant battles or news of a new king carried by a weary traveler. This kept the monastic community, despite its physical isolation, subtly connected to the pulse of wider society, allowing them to pray for specific needs or prepare for potential challenges. This quiet intelligence gathering underscores their often underestimated role as centers of information. Beyond hospitality, monasteries often served as centers of healing and medical knowledge for the surrounding communities. Monks frequently possessed a rudimentary, but often effective, understanding of herbal medicine derived from ancient texts and generations of practical experience. If you were working in the infirmary or the herb garden, you might find yourself tending not just to sick brothers, but also to local villagers who came seeking remedies for their ailments. Imagine a desperate mother bringing her feverish child to the abbey gates, trusting in the monk's knowledge of healing plants. This direct service to the local populace solidified the monastery's role as an indispensable part of the wider social fabric, a beacon of care and compassion in an often brutal world. The provision of charity to the poor was another crucial point of connection. Monasteries often maintained almonries, where surplus food and alms were distributed to the needy of the surrounding area. You might be involved in baking bread for the poor or preparing simple gruel to hand out at the gates. This direct interaction with the less fortunate was a powerful, tangible expression of the monastic vow of poverty and solidarity with the suffering. It ensured that the monastery, despite its wealth in land or knowledge, remained grounded in humility and service, preventing it from becoming an entirely self-contained, isolated entity. This constant engagement with the needy reminded you that even in your chosen life of detachment, you still had a profound responsibility to serve humanity. However, these external contacts, while providing crucial connections, also presented their own set of challenges to the monk's chosen path of isolation. They could be a source of distraction, tempting you with glimpses of the world you had renounced. The stories of travelers might stir old memories or spark a fleeting desire for the comforts and freedoms of secular life. You would constantly have to guard against these subtle temptations, reaffirming your commitment to your vows and the solitude you had embraced. It was a constant exercise in detachment, a deliberate drawing back from the fleeting allure of external life to focus on your inner spiritual journey. Historians still openly debate the true motivations behind monastic hospitality and charity. Was it purely altruistic, born of Christian love, or did it also serve a practical purpose, enhancing the monastery's reputation, attracting donations, and ensuring good relations with local authorities? The truth, as with most human endeavors, likely lies somewhere in between. This open academic question invites us to consider the complex interplay of piety and pragmatism that shaped medieval monastic life. You, as a monk, would navigate this reality, striving to perform every act of charity with a pure heart, regardless of any potential worldly benefits. The relationship between the monastery and local feudal lords or kings was another significant bridge to the outside world. Monasteries were often major landowners, wielding considerable economic and political influence. Abbots might be consulted by rulers on matters of state, and monastic communities could provide scribes, administrators, or even military support in times of crisis. While your personal life as a monk was secluded, the institution you belonged to was deeply entangled in the power dynamics of medieval society. This institutional connection meant that the monastery was never truly immune to the political currents of the time, and its fate was often intertwined with that of the secular rulers. Sometimes, the monastery even served as a place of refuge or retirement for members of the nobility or royal families. Kings and queens might retire to a monastery in their old age, or younger children from powerful families might be sent there for education or for a life of religious devotion. While these highborn individuals might bring with them certain privileges or expectations, their presence further blurred the lines between the monastic world and the outside, adding layers of complexity to the community's internal dynamics. You might find yourself serving alongside a former prince or princess, a testament to the idea that in God's eyes, all are equal. Even artistic commissions served as a bridge. Wealthy patrons from the outside world would often commission illuminated manuscripts, carved altarpieces, or stained glass windows from monastic workshops. This meant that the artistic and intellectual output of the monastery reached beyond its walls, enriching the spiritual and cultural life of broader society. The beauty you helped to create or preserve would inspire awe and devotion in people who would never step foot inside your cloister. It was a way for your quiet, internal devotion to manifest in tangible forms that touched the lives of countless others. The practice of pilgrimage, both by monks and to monasteries, also fostered connection. Monks might occasionally be permitted to undertake a pilgrimage to a holy site, a rare opportunity to step outside the familiar walls of their abbey and experience the wider world, albeit through a spiritual lens. Conversely, monasteries themselves were often pilgrimage destinations, drawing people from far and wide seeking spiritual healing, relics, or simply the presence of devout men. These movements of people created a vibrant, if intermittent, exchange between the isolated monastic world and the spiritual seekers of the secular realm. In summary, while the medieval monk consciously embraced a life of profound personal isolation, the monasteries themselves were not entirely cut off from the world. Through hospitality, charity, intellectual output, and political influence, they maintained crucial connections, acting as vital centers of learning, healing, and spiritual guidance for medieval society. You, as a monk, lived at the nexus of this paradox, a solitary spiritual journey deeply interwoven with a profound commitment to serving the world you had seemingly left behind. This dynamic interplay between isolation and engagement shaped not only your individual experience, but also the enduring legacy of monasticism in the history of civilization. Your quiet contributions, from copying texts to tending to the sick, had a ripple effect far beyond the immediate confines of your consecrated life. As the moon waxes and wanes, casting its pale light upon the monastery, your life continues its deep, internalized journey. The interactions with the outside world, however brief or formalized, serve as mere counterpoints to the profound internal work that defines your days and nights. It is in this relentless pursuit of inner peace and spiritual enlightenment that the monk truly confronts and often transcends the miseries of isolation. The heart of this transcendence lies in contemplation and mystical experience. For many monks, particularly those who dedicated themselves to intense prayer and asceticism, the goal was not merely to endure isolation, but to transform it into a direct encounter with the divine. Imagine long hours spent in your cell, not just reading scripture, but allowing the words to dissolve into pure presence, seeking a wordless union with God. This was the pinnacle of monastic life, a journey beyond intellectual understanding into the realm of pure spiritual experience. It involved emptying the mind of all distractions, all worldly concerns, and opening oneself completely to the inflowing grace of God. This isn't to say it was easy. The path to mystical experience was often fraught with spiritual dryness, doubt, and periods of profound darkness. the dark night of the soul, as it was later described by mystics. You would push through these internal obstacles, relying on unwavering faith and the discipline you had cultivated. Yet, for those who persevered, moments of profound peace, of intense joy, and of an overwhelming sense of God's presence could break through the veil of daily life. These were the moments that validated the entire monastic endeavor, moments that made the solitude not just bearable but deeply desirable. You might feel a warmth spreading through your chest, a sense of profound clarity, or even a fleeting vision that confirmed your path. A fascinating, though often debated, historical detail is the various forms of mental imagery and visualization used by monks during contemplation. While not always explicitly taught in early monastic rules, later spiritual writers suggested imaginative prayer where monks would vividly picture scenes from the Bible, placing themselves within the story. Imagine yourself walking with Christ through Galilee, or standing at the foot of the cross, feeling the emotions and sensations of the scene as if you were truly there. This technique allowed monks to engage with the sacred narratives on a deeply personal, emotional level, transforming abstract theological concepts into living experiences. Historians still discuss the extent to which these practices bordered on, or even constituted, early forms of guided meditation, aimed at focusing the mind and heart. The very act of living a life of constant mindfulness was another powerful tool against the negative effects of isolation. Every task, no matter how mundane, sweeping a floor, stirring a pot, walking through the cloister, was to be performed with full attention, as an act of prayer. This wasn't about rushing through duties to get to the next thing, it was about being fully present in the moment, consecrating every action to God. This continuous awareness anchored you in the here and now, preventing your mind from dwelling on past regrets or future anxieties, which often plague those in isolated environments. You learn to see the sacred in the ordinary, transforming chores into opportunities for spiritual growth. The simple warmth of a broom handle in your hand, the rhythmic swish of the bristles, became a point of focus, pulling you away from the distracting thoughts. However, the relentless internal focus required for such a life could sometimes lead to spiritual pride, a subtle but dangerous temptation. A monk might, without realizing it, begin to feel superior to those in the secular world, or even to less spiritual brothers within the monastery. This was a constant challenge, as humility was considered paramount. You would continually have to examine your own motives to ensure that your spiritual efforts were genuinely for God and not for self aggrandizement. The monastic structure, with its emphasis on obedience and the abbot's authority, was partly designed to counteract this tendency, reminding you that your journey was one of humble service, not personal glory. Historians still openly debate the extent to which the emphasis on individual spiritual perfection, as practiced in some monastic traditions, inadvertently fostered a kind of spiritual individualism that might sometimes conflict with the ideal of communal brotherhood. While the goal was corporate salvation, the intense focus on one's personal journey could, for some, lead to a subtle detachment from the immediate needs of the community. This question reminds us of the nuanced and sometimes contradictory ideals at play within these ancient institutions. The long hours of solitary study in the monastic library also contributed to a profound intellectual life that mitigated the pangs of isolation. You weren't just reading, you were engaging in a silent dialogue with the greatest minds of history and theology. The words on the page, painstakingly copied by hands long since turned to dust, came alive as you pondered their meaning, wrestled with complex theological arguments, or delighted in the beauty of ancient poetry. This intellectual companionship, though indirect, offered a powerful sense of connection to a broader intellectual tradition, a reminder that you were part of a lineage of thinkers stretching back through centuries. You might spend an entire afternoon unraveling a particularly dense philosophical treatise, feeling a thrill of understanding as its complexities slowly revealed themselves. The preservation of secular knowledge by monks, though less emphasized than their religious duties, was a critical contribution to Western civilization. While their primary focus was theological texts, many monasteries also diligently copied works of classical literature, science, and philosophy. Without these quiet scribes, much of the intellectual heritage of Greece and Rome would have been lost during the tumultuous early medieval period. You, as a monk, might copy Virgil or Aristotle alongside the Gospels, perhaps finding a subtle joy in the beauty of their prose or the rigor of their thought, even if their themes were not overtly religious. This uncelebrated work ensured that a vital intellectual flame continued to flicker through the dark ages, a lasting legacy of their quiet labor. Furthermore, the act of record keeping and chronicle writing by monks provided a unique perspective on their own times. Many monasteries kept detailed chronicles of local events, weather patterns, important births and deaths, and major historical occurrences. These monastic chronicles, often written with a keen eye for detail and a theological interpretation of events, are invaluable primary sources for historians today. You might have been assigned the task of chronicler, meticulously recording the events of your region, from the devastating effects of a famine to the visit of a king. This gave your life a direct connection to history, a sense that your observations, however humble, would contribute to the future understanding of your era. In the deepest moments of solitude, particularly during the late night vigils, monks often experienced what they termed divine visitations or spiritual consolations. These were not necessarily visions, but rather profound feelings of peace, joy, or certainty that served as powerful affirmations of their spiritual path. Imagine hours of silent prayer, feeling exhausted and perhaps disheartened, when suddenly a profound sense of warmth or light fills your soul, bringing an inexplicable sense of comfort and reassurance. These were the spiritual fruits of their rigorous discipline, moments where the barrier between the human and the divine seemed to thin, offering a glimpse of the ultimate union they sought. These profound internal experiences were the ultimate antidote to the miseries of isolation, transforming deprivation into an abundance of grace. The monastic commitment to liturgical innovation and musical development also provided a unique form of engagement. Monks were not just passive recipients of liturgy. They often developed and refined musical forms, particularly Gregorian chant, which became a hallmark of medieval worship. The intricate melodies, designed to aid contemplation and elevate the spirit, were practiced daily. You might spend hours perfecting a particular chant, your voice blending seamlessly with your brother's, creating a harmony that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. This artistic contribution, born from their isolated devotion, had a profound and lasting impact on Western music and spirituality. Ultimately, the medieval monk's triumph over miserable isolation was achieved not by escaping it, but by embracing and transforming it. They forged a powerful inner life, drawing strength from spiritual discipline, intellectual pursuit, and a profound connection to the divine. The very solitude that might crush others became, for them, a fertile ground for growth, a sacred space where the human spirit could truly soar. You, as a monk, living this paradoxical existence, demonstrated the extraordinary capacity of the human soul to find freedom and abundance in the quietest, most stripped down of lives, leaving behind a legacy of resilience that continues to resonate centuries later. The final Vespers bell rings, its last reverberations fading into the gathering dusk. You stand, perhaps a little more stooped than when you first entered these walls, your hair thinner, your face etched with the lines of countless prayers and silent hours, yet within you, a profound sense of peace resides, forged in the crucible of isolation. This final chapter isn't about new struggles, but about the enduring legacy of a life lived in profound devotion and the quiet strength found in solitude, a strength that rippled outwards from the monastery walls to shape the very foundations of the world you had left behind. The impact of medieval monks, despite their chosen separation from the bustling world, resonated far beyond the stone walls of their abbeys. Their contributions, often unacknowledged in the grand narratives of kings and battles, quietly shaped the very fabric of Western civilization. You, as one of these quiet laborers, played an indispensable role in the preservation of knowledge. Imagine a world without the meticulous copying of ancient Greek and Roman texts. Much of the classical heritage, the philosophical insights of Plato and Aristotle, the scientific understanding gleaned from forgotten scrolls, and the literary masterpieces of Virgil and Homer would have been utterly lost during the tumultuous period following the fall of the Roman Empire. It was your diligent hand in the scriptorium, under dim candlelight, that painstakingly safeguarded these treasures for future generations. Each carefully formed letter, each precisely rendered illumination, was an act of quiet defiance against oblivion. You were not just a scribe, you were a living bridge across centuries, ensuring that the intellectual flame did not extinguish, preserving the very language and thought processes that would eventually fuel the Renaissance. This was more than just saving old books. It was about preserving the very foundations of Western thought and laying the groundwork for its eventual resurgence. Think of the sheer volume of material that passed through monastic hands, not just religious texts, but also works on medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and law. You might have spent months, even years, on a single volume, knowing that your labor contributed to a chain of knowledge that stretched back to antiquity and forward into an uncertain future. The silence of the scriptorium, broken only by the scratching of quills, was a testament to this immense intellectual undertaking. This quiet, ceaseless work, often performed without personal recognition, underscores the profound, often understated, role monasteries played in keeping civilization itself alive. Historians often emphasize this as the single most significant contribution of monasticism, a quiet act of immense historical importance that directly enabled future societal and intellectual progress. Your life, though outwardly simple, was a bulwark against intellectual oblivion, a testament to the enduring power of learning even in the most challenging of times. Beyond mere preservation, monasteries were also centers of learning and innovation. While strict in their religious adherence, many monks engaged in scholarly pursuits, writing commentaries, developing new theological insights, and even making practical advancements in fields like agriculture and engineering. Think of the intricate irrigation systems developed by Cistercian monks, who transformed barren lands into fertile fields, or the careful breeding of livestock that improved food production for both the monastery and the surrounding communities. These innovations, born out of necessity for self-sufficiency and a spirit of diligent stewardship, quietly propelled medieval society forward. You might have been one of these quiet innovators, applying your intellect not to grand theories, but to practical solutions that improved daily life within the abbey, and, by extension, had a ripple effect on the broader economy and well-being of the region. They were, in many ways, the research and development centers of their era, meticulously experimenting and refining techniques that would benefit generations. The very concept of a structured daily life, with its emphasis on regular prayer, work, and study, which became a model for later institutions, stemmed largely from monastic practices. The horarium, that precise schedule governing your day, dictated by the tolling of bells, provided a framework for purpose and productivity that was rare in the often chaotic medieval world. This disciplined approach to time management, a hallmark of monastic life, influenced not just other religious orders, but also secular institutions, laying some of the groundwork for modern organizational structures, even leading to a more standardized approach to time itself. Your life, lived by the bell, contributed to a broader understanding of order and discipline that transcended the monastic walls, subtly shaping the way future societies organize their days. This silent influence on daily routines and the division of labor is a testament to the monk's practical wisdom, demonstrating how profound spiritual commitments can lead to tangible societal benefits. Moreover, the monk's constant pursuit of inner peace and spiritual discipline left a profound philosophical and psychological legacy. They were pioneers in the study of the human mind and soul, grappling with universal challenges like loneliness, temptation, and the search for meaning. Their writings on acedia, that spiritual lethargy or despair, offer timeless insights into psychological states we still recognize today. Even if we call them by different names like burnout or depression, their emphasis on virtues like humility and obedience, and their rigorous methods of contemplative prayer provided pathways for navigating the internal landscape. You, through your struggles and triumphs in isolation, contributed to a rich tradition of spiritual psychology that continues to inspire and guide seekers today. The quiet wisdom gleaned from centuries of monastic contemplation continues to offer profound insights into navigating the complexities of the human spirit, teaching us the value of introspection and resilience in the face of internal turmoil. It was a rigorous, often unforgiving path, but one that promised and often delivered profound inner freedom and peace. The artistic output of the monasteries, from the vibrant, intricate details of illuminated manuscripts to the soaring beauty of Gothic architecture, the intricate carvings, and the luminous stained glass windows, also left an indelible mark on Western culture. These works, created not for worldly fame, but for the glory of God, often represent some of the highest artistic achievements of the Middle Ages. The beauty that permeated monastic life, even in its austerity, served to elevate the spirit and communicate profound theological truths to a largely illiterate populace. You, perhaps as a scribe or an illuminator, a mason or a carpenter contributing to the very structure of the abbey, added to this vast treasury of sacred art, enriching the cultural heritage of humanity in ways that still captivate us today. The very stones of these ancient abbeys stand as enduring monuments to the monks' dedication to beauty and their profound spiritual vision. Think about the sheer resilience of these communities. They endured plagues that decimated populations, famines that brought widespread starvation, wars that ravaged landscapes, and political upheaval that overturned kingdoms. Yet their core mission endured for centuries. The monastery, constant presence in a changing world, became a symbol of stability and continuity, a rock in a tumultuous sea. Your life within its walls, dedicated to an unchanging purpose, became part of this enduring testament to faith and human perseverance, a silent beacon of hope in an often dark age. They were not just isolated pockets of piety, but anchors of stability in a world prone to chaos. Even the simple act of silence, so central to your life, left a lasting mark. In a world increasingly filled with noise and distraction, the monastic commitment to quiet contemplation stands as a powerful countercultural statement. It reminds us of the profound value of introspection, of listening to our inner voice, and of the peace that can be found in stillness. Your life, lived in profound quiet, offers a timeless lesson on the importance of creating internal space for true growth and understanding, a lesson that resonates perhaps more strongly today than ever before. This wasn't merely the absence of sound, but the deliberate cultivation of an internal quiet that allowed for deeper perception and spiritual connection. The debates among historians about the exact balance of isolation and connection, or the psychological impact of monastic life, only serve to highlight the enduring fascination with these communities. They compel us to look beyond simplistic narratives and appreciate the complex humanity of those who chose such a radical path. You, as a monk, navigating these intricacies daily, demonstrated that genuine connection could be found even in the deepest solitude, and that true freedom lay in spiritual liberation, not worldly indulgence. Your journey, full of quiet challenges and profound triumphs, serves as a powerful reminder of the human spirit's capacity for extraordinary devotion and resilience. Your legacy, then, is multifaceted and deeply interwoven with the fabric of Western civilization. It is in the countless books that survived because of your diligent copying, in the agricultural and technological innovations that improved medieval life, in the profound spiritual wisdom that continues to guide seekers, and in the sheer testament to human endurance and faith. You embraced isolation, not as an end in itself, but as a crucible, a means to a profound and lasting connection with God, with knowledge, and with the enduring spirit of humanity. Your quiet life, dedicated to a higher purpose, became a silent force that shaped the world in ways that continue to echo through the centuries, a beacon of light from a time of shadows, illuminating the path for all who seek depth and meaning.